Okay, so on this one, they have one log, and they say they want us to write it as a sum, which is adding, or difference, subtraction of logs. So they somehow, and that's plural, logs. So they want us to write this as like a couple of logs added or subtracted. That makes sense what they're saying? Write the following as a sum, an adding or subtraction difference of logarithms. So, okay, how do we do that? Well, looking at the properties, here are the, from the exam 3 notes, here's the log properties. And that basically says that multiplying for one log becomes adding for two. Notice the harder operation for one log is easier for two logs. And then division, fraction for one log becomes subtraction, easier, right? Subtraction's easier than dividing. You learned subtraction when you were kindergarten, first grade, maybe second. Dividing you learned when you're older, third, fourth, fifth grade. It's harder operation, right? Dividing for one log is easier. It's just subtraction for two. That's what the properties say. Harder for one log, easier for two. And multiplying is connected with adding because they both make things bigger. Multiplying is repeated adding. Dividing is connected with subtraction because they both make things smaller. Dividing is also actually repeated subtraction. How many times does y go in is how many times you can subtract it out. Okay, so getting back to the problem, what are we going to do then? I'm going to say, okay, this one log of 5b over 3 is two separate logs subtracted. Does that make sense? Dividing, which is harder, that's a harder operation for one log, is just subtraction, which is an easier operation for two logs. Remember, the job is always easier. Like many hands make the job easier, like multiple people working on a job makes it easier. So if you have two logs, the job becomes easier. It's just subtraction. Now, one other thing. Right here, this means 5 times b, doesn't it? This is multiply. So that means we can take this and break it up into two logs. Log 5 plus log b, and then we still have the minus log 3. You don't need parentheses on anything. That's the final answer. Do you see that? What happened there? Well, again, it's really the same thing. You just might not have noticed it. It's multiplying, which is a harder operation, right? Multiplying, dividing are the harder operations. Adding, subtracting are the easy ones you learned when you were kindergarten, first grade. Multiplying is a harder operation for one log, becomes adding, easier operation for two logs. Do you see that? 5b means 5 times b, doesn't it? It means multiplying, which is a harder operation. Adding, subtracting are the easy ones. Multiplying, dividing are the hard ones. Harder for one, easier for two. It's just adding for two. And then divided by 3 means subtract a third log of 3, which is, again, an easier operation for multiple logs. And so what's the final answer they want us to type in? Log 5. And you can do parentheses if you want to. It's totally optional. Log 5 plus log b minus log 3. Like that. Did we do what they said? Yeah, we wrote it as a sum or difference of logarithms. Several logs added and subtracted. There we go.